Your superpower is that you can conjure anything in your palm provided it only costs $1 or less. You have been relentlessly mocked for having such a useless power until you realize just how useful it can be. How do you determine the worth of something? Sitting outside on the field by myself, I was tinkering with my superpower that was just gifted to me, as was the case for all those who had reached a certain age. It was quite useless at first glance. The ability to conjure anything in my palm if it costs $1 or less. I tried to conjure up a new smartphone, but nothing happened. It was as I expected. Thinking a little longer, I tried to conjure up an older smartphone, one that was much more beat up in my mind. One that someone could easily get off the street market in a less developed country. Still nothing happened. Then I changed my approach. I decided to try conjuring up a phone that was considered trash. After all, did trash have a value? Most would freely throw it away. Still nothing formed. I sighed. It was a bit of a stretch, but I guess that based on my power, everything had some intrinsic value that could be associated with currency in some manner. Still, I wanted to push the boundaries of what I could do. That was after all what we were taught. I tried to summon a lemon, and a single one appeared. From what I saw in the supermarket, these were typically under $1. I summoned a candy bar and started eating it while I kept on thinking. The ability was nifty in summoning food for sure, but it wasn't anything as flashy as what my peers had. I summoned a bottle of water and froze. How much was water worth? In some places and times, it would be priceless, but here it was also something you can get under $1 if you buy in bulk. However, in the vending machine, it would easily cost more than over $1. Could I just summon water without a bottle? I tried and it worked. A ball of water formed temporarily, and quickly dissipated and soaked my hand. I had another idea now. Instead of water, I tried to summon fire. How much was fire worth? Like water, a ball of fire appeared, but before it could collapse, I flinched away, and just avoided catching it. Immediately, I summoned water to douse the fire. It seemed like for things that weren't tangible, it would just conjure a sphere that can store about a liter of that thing. It was about a radius of 6 centimeters, so it wasn't too large either. That made me curious. Now I tried to summon pop without a bottle, and it was also about the same size sphere. This time I tried to summon some beer as well and that worked, but the size was noticeably smaller. That made it clear for me that for some things that were arbitrary, it would default to a certain size, but if the thing I wanted to summon has more value, it would be smaller. Pop and water were interesting too. I couldn't summon it in excess in one go. The default size was still that 1 liter sphere, even though I knew that pop could be sold for 2 liters in a bottle. Water technically had no value if I visualized seawater or rainwater, but it was still limited to a certain size. I tried a different approach, conjuring a single skewer of roasted beef. It worked, and was still hot and quite delicious to eat. At least with this power, I don't have to worry about starving to death. I was also able to conjure a hot dog as well as burgers. Both of them were still pretty small, and it would need quite a few to help me be full. Shifting gears, I tried to conjure up metal. I imagined a thin sharp blade of steel, and it appeared. It was long enough to be a dinner knife, but even sharper than I would have imagined. Bolts, screws, nails were all things I could conjure, but despite being much less than $1, I could only conjure one thing per hand. I could conjure 2 different things at the same time in each hand, but not multiple things equal to $1. Frowning, I continued experimenting some more. Electricity worked to my surprise, and was quite shocking. Light as well. Darkness or shadows did not, which made sense. Those were the absence of light, and so technically I was trying to summon nothing. It was the same with coldness, but I couldn't conjure heat either, only fire. It seemed like specific energies were allowed, but some weren't. I didn't expect it, but certain living animals also worked as well. Most bugs and small rodents I could conjure, and they would still be alive, but a cat or dog, or even a person would fail. At this point, I was starting to consider the implications of my power. Am I just creating something out of nothing, or transporting something that exists somewhere into my hand? To test this out, I tried to imagine a complicated and unique design. This time, I conjured a small piece of steel in that image, and it worked. It was able to make it look exactly as I imagined, as well as have the engraving of the current time and date. I guess it was creating something out of nothing. What was also interesting was that the labor that was required to make something like this was not accounted for, only the base material. With that, I had my answer as to what I should do. In my other hand, I tried to conjure up another piece of steel, and this time a steel bird the size of my thumb appeared. It was extremely detailed and quite a work of art. It still used the same size of steel that would be worth less than $1. Even though the material itself was quite cheap, the design was something that could easily go for 100 or 1,000 times its value. A smile grew on my face as I started to come up with my plan. It was time to start a jewelry store.